I am Charlie Brooker, and welcome to So Wrong It's Right, a show that does for panel games what I'd like to do to teenage girls. Absolutely nothing. This is a show about failure, misconception, and the way events can sometimes spiral completely out of control. Life can be a struggle. Personally, I find it a great comfort to remember that no matter how bad things get, there's nothing in life that can't be solved by simply rolling your sleeves up and jumping off a bridge. Now, good things come in threes, and the three exceptions that prove that rule are my guests tonight. Will you please welcome Rob Beckett, Susan Calman and Richard Osman. I will be asking them all a series of questions. Their aim is to answer each of these questions as wrongly as possible. I'll be awarding a point to whoever I think has given me the worst answer. The first round is called Wrong Time, Wrong Place. I'll be asking my guests to delve into their own calamitous pasts in an attempt to out-wrong each other with stories from their own lives. This week's theme is teenage years. I had lots of spots when I was a teenager. My favourite was in the bush opposite the netball courts. When I think of how insecure I was as a teenager, I sometimes wish I could somehow travel back in time, find the young me and tell him everything would turn out okay. And also tell him to copyright the word Facebook. Today's teenagers have it tougher than ever, which is why it's important for the older generation to do their bit. I'm actually helping to pay for the college education of an 18-year-old girl from Preston. At least I think the money goes on college. To be honest, how she spends it away from her webcam is her business. Anyway, my question is, what was the most excruciating moment, or incident maybe, of your teenage years? Rob, you seem closest to the teenage years, just looking at you. You are disgustingly young. So we'll begin with you.
Oh, thanks. As a teenager, the worst experience I had was I was proper fat as a kid. Like, I was fat as a toddler. I was so fat as a toddler I couldn't wear socks.
What?
The elastic in the sock cut off the circulation. So if I wore socks, I had little blue feet. I was still fat as a teenager. I'm still losing weight from the toddler years, I think. But, yeah, as a teenager at school, my nickname was Fat German, because I was fat and looked like a German. Nice imagination. But, yeah, anyway, I was walking home from school one day, and a white van went past, and they shouted at me, "Eat this, fat boy," and threw a sausage roll at my face. Which was pretty degrading, to be fair, especially because it went down a drain and I couldn't even eat it.
How long did you spend trying to fish it out of that drain?
I mean, I did have a go with a twig, but I couldn't... I could get to it, but there was nothing to scoop it up. But that's good for a white van man. Normally it's just abuse, but, you know, he thought about it and sacrificed his lunch.
Looking back, Rob, I shouldn't have done it. I do apologise.
This sausage roll didn't hit you?
No, it got near enough to my face to be quite, for me to remember.
Because they're pretty molten inside. I mean, it's hotter than the core of the sun.
Well, this was about
the inside of a sort of Greggs sausage roll.
Well, this was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they sort of cooled down by then. If it was a 9 a.m. hit, I would have been all over the place.
OK, so, Susan, what was the most excruciating moment of your teenage years?
For me, it was the school disco. I only ever went to one school disco. I wasn't the most popular child at school. But one year I thought, I'm going to go to the school disco and attempt to socialise with other normal people. And my mother said, "I'll get you an outfit." She decided, and it was the 80s, so she went into a shop called Tammy Girl. Bearing in mind I was essentially this size, perhaps slightly more rotund, like a weeble, essentially, and got me a polka dot outfit, batwing and culottes. And if people aren't aware of what culottes are, they're not trousers, they're not a skirt, they're just really horrific. At that point, I essentially looked like MC Hammer. She may as well have put a sign on me saying, "Don't touch this." And absolutely no one did. It was at that point, my first school disco, I realised I have a slight problem in that when I dance, I don't ever move my feet. I just plant them firmly on the ground and move my upper half, because I think
I do that, yeah.
And you just kind of do that. And since then, I don't think I've ever been to a discotheque, because I get flashbacks of everyone slow dancing to Star Trekking across the universe. I don't know why they chose that as the final song.
Star Trekking is a song that no one has ever covered on the X Factor.
No.
Why is that?
I don't know. It was a classic. It was funny. It was informative. It was just. I bought the 12-inch version of Star Trekking. So anyway, the point. Everyone else was having a smoochy, smooch, and I was dancing essentially like I hadn't taken drugs because I just don't do it, right, kids? I was dancing like I'd taken too many drugs, not moving my feet, and I didn't have a date or a kiss until I was approximately, I don't know, 25 after that. So it was excruciating.
Was you there till you was 25?
Yes.
No wonder you're not kissing, though, when you're in the same place for 15 years.
It's a really long song.
It's a really long song. And the thing is, Rob, when I was brought up to see something through, unlike the younger generation.
Richard, what happened to you in your teenage years that made you turn out the way you are?
Well, I'll take you back to 1986, when a young Rob Beckett was lying in a cradle, socks cutting off the circulation to his feet. Like a little fat German baby. No, so in 1986, the big news for me, less so Star Trek, was the Beastie Boys. Mm. The Beastie Boys had just turned... Yeah, there you go, you see. Mike D is in. So one Christmas, because I was bored, I like writing things, I wrote a little rap about... Don't judge me. Well, wait, hear the rest of it and then judge me. I wrote a little rap about the Christmas story. Okay, about, Mary Joseph... It gets, I didn't perform it because that would be crazy. No one wants to hear me rapping. And it was 3 months later, what comes around? Easter. So I thought, well, I enjoyed writing that Christmas one. That was fun. And this is an even bigger story, if anything. And so I sat down. I just, over a half term, I wrote a little rap about the Easter story. My hero was Jesus Christ, who was an Hispanic rapper. And his band, who were the Disciples, and he was getting all sorts of trouble with the press. Pontius Publisher, because satire. Pontius Publisher, and he's crucified by the press, and later came back.
This is sounding pretty good.
Yeah, fine, absolutely fine. So long as no one ever heard it.
Yeah,
that's the key. Anyway, about a week later, back at school, and our deputy head said, I think maybe some of the pupils should do assemblies. Because I thought, okay, I've just written something that's about 15 minutes long. People will want to hear that, I think. Fast forward to 2 weeks later, and you know what? People really didn't want to hear it. There's 1,500 people at my school. They're all there. I'm up on stage with a baseball cap, and my friend, who's the only posh person at my school, St. John, and he was. We were the Beastie Boys of the piece, and we did the thing. The key thing you have to do in rap at the time is we'd take one line at a time, but you had to both do the last word of each line.
Oh yeah.
So we did that every single line for 15 minutes as well. And we performed this 15-minute rap version of the Easter story to bemused silence. It was the single worst theatrical event in history. I've been to see We Will Rock You. And it was worse than that. And coming off afterwards, it's not like anyone was horrible, literally nobody said anything.
Do it now in its entirety.
Yeah.
But can you remember any of it?
No.
Oh, come on. You must remember one rhyme.
No, I remember little bits from the Christmas one. I remember in the Christmas one, I was describing who was there, and it said there were 3 shepherds who had left their flocks, 3 wise men, and a human beatbox.
I kind of want to see you do it.
Well, a video exists. Yeah,
is it on YouTube?
A video exists. My mum has the only copy, which is one of the many reasons why I'm lovely to my mum.
I want to see this on a Before They Were Famous, on a career-ending special.
Yeah, I think I'd have
to... Well, so in summary then, so the stories are, Rob, you had a sausage roll thrown at you. Susan, you went to the school disco dressed as MC Hammer, effectively. And Richard, you did a 15-minute sort of concept album rap about the miracle of Easter. Well, you know what, Richard? The point belongs to you. Right. Now, our next round is called Do Your Worst. It's a test of my guest's capacity for creative wrongdoing. This week's theme is the law. I actually come from quite a lawless background. My dad always had the fuzz on his back, until eventually I bought him a lady shave. You see, we were thinking about that earlier, and we were going to say, my dad always had the fuzz on his back because he was a Greek fisherman. thought, am I the only one who thinks Greek fishermen are hairy? When I was a kid, as soon as I saw the cops, I ran, because I had an irrational fear of small woodland areas. Anyway, panel, your task is to pitch me the worst possible idea for a new law, and we will start with you, Susan.
It will never happen, but I'd love to see it happening, and that is that any man who walks up to a woman and says, "Cheer up, love, it might never happen," is immediately imprisoned. And the guards for the month that he's imprisoned are women who tell him exactly what has happened to them for their entire lives. Because it happens to me a lot. I don't know if I look like I'm miserable quite a lot of the time. I think I do, right? That I'm just standing and a guy will come up to me and say, "Cheer up, love, it might never happen." And if I respond in the way that I want to respond, which is, "Well, how do you know about my life? A lot has happened to me. I have a difficult time. I have low self-esteem. Do you want to hear about my relationship? I bought a flat with a woman who cheated on me with my friend." Let's start there. That's 1996. 1997. So I just want to say it has happened, mate. And if it's okay, this is my head, and I'd like to think about it without you saying to cheer up. So I want any man who thinks it's acceptable to go up to a woman and say that, to be imprisoned, and essentially be made to listen to every single woman's problems for approximately a month. They're not allowed to sleep either. They're going to have to be kept awake. No, so if Rob, I mean, you're a cheeky chappy. Say it to me now, Rob. Say it.
Would it be better if I said darling instead of love? Would that help? Or...
Yes, that would make the whole situation much better, Rob.
But surely, to play devil's advocate, surely these men are just trying to spread some joy and some light in the world. They're just trying to cheer you up. They're just trying to help out a fellow traveller in life. They're just coming. Don't just shake your head, Susan. Oh, cheer up! It might never happen. For God's sake!
If you see me in the street looking sad, here's a couple of things that'll cheer me up. A £10 note, that will cheer me up. Perhaps a cream cake of some kind. Even throw a sausage roll at my head. That will cheer me up.
Have you ever asked what might not happen? Because it may well be, it could be, they have some information.
That's true. So, is this essentially that I have been...
People have been trying to warn you for a very long time.
From the future.
For a spy, maybe a spy network, I've been identified as a conduit for information, perhaps from, I don't know, Eastern Europe. And they've been trying to get through an important message about perhaps an impending nuclear disaster. And instead of saying, "What might happen? The pigeon has flown the coop," I've just been telling them to bugger off. And we could all die because I get aggressive about men.
It's a good idea.
Sorry.
It's a good idea for a sci-fi thriller, isn't it? They realised that a nuclear catastrophe never happened, but people were worried about it, so they sent people back in time. They can't give away that they're from the future, because we'd all go mad and fall to the pavement like fitting or something, punching ourselves. So they come in, they're just going, "Cheer up, love, it might never happen." That's as close as they can get. And you dismiss these men.
Like a morale-boosting Terminator, just coming back.
Richard, what's the most appalling law you can think of?
Well, there's a trend now, isn't there, for shortening words, like totally amazing becomes totes amaze, things like that.
Yes.
Which I think it started on The Only Way Is S. I think is where that. I think that's where that started, and people are furious about it. But I have to say, I'm all in favour of it.
What?
I genuinely find the objections in cred. I really do. So I suggest my law would be to say words properly would be totes illegal. I think genuinely it saves a lot of time. If I'm going to say tremend instead of tremendous, or delish instead of delicious, that saves me milliseconds or millisecs. You know, so I can spend less time in the off, a little bit less time stuck in traff, that sort of thing. So if I say I'm spending less time in the off, you go, "Oh, that's ridiculous, say office." But if I was to say I'm going to spend less time at uni, you go, "Oh, yeah, okay, fair enough."
Oh, well, that's reasonable.
Yeah, I think it is. Well, look, we'll have a proper court. We'll set up a special court. So if you want to argue a case, you can have a duty solish if you want one. Or if you're a child, you can have an appropriate adult. But you either plead totes not guilts or guilts. But if we find you guilty, you go to prison. That's fair enough. And
do you think that would take the edge off some terrible crimes? Yeah, I'm guilts.
Yeah, guilts. Hands up, guilt. And the longer the sentence, I think that's fair enough.
But words are a certain length for a reason,
No,
surely.
they're not.
Yes, they are. It's because they've got a pleasing rhythm to them. It's also to differentiate them from other words.
You think? Well, totes a maze. You can understand that's fine, isn't it?
Well, totes means something else as well, doesn't it? Totes.
Oh, so you don't think any word should mean the same as other words?
No!
Do you mean no, they shouldn't, or no as in I know?
Wow.
You've broken part of my mind. I can't think properly. Rob, well, we'll move to you. What terrible law would you come up with?
I hate people. I hate people that wear tracks. I hate all people. Sick of it. Get rid of them all. No, the people that wear tracksuits during the day and think it's acceptable when they're not doing any exercise whatsoever. So I think if you're prepared to wear a tracksuit all day, you should at least do like 800 metres around the track. Because most of the people that wear their tracksuits are overweight and probably haven't done any running.
Hang on a minute. As a former overweighty, there's not much camaraderie, is there?
I'm reformed, so I'm trying to lead them to a better life. I just think you shouldn't be allowed to... I know it's comfy, but why... Adult men wearing a full tracksuit to the shops, it's not acceptable, is it?
Well, first things first. How do you know they're not on their way to do some circuit training?
Well, there will be interviews with everyone in the street. Like, if you're going to wear a baseball cap, have the rest of the equipment. Glove, bat... Do you know what I mean? Like, go for it.
I don't want to see people walking around carrying bats. At Christmas, I was given a onesie. Are you familiar with the phenomenon of the onesie, the all-in-one? It's basically a baby suit, like a baby grow for an adult. And it's got a zip that goes from top to... Although you can zip it right up over your face if you want. You're like a banana. Like a blue banana.
My question is, why are you wearing it now, Charlie?
I did wear it in the house. You know that weird dead period between Christmas and New Year where anything goes and there are no laws of decency. I was just lolling around in a onesie. And it's weirdly infantilising. Quite quickly you sort of wonder whether you should bother going to the toilet or just sit where you are. OK, so at the end of that round, Susan, you're recommending prison for patronising men. Richard, you want to make full words illegal.
Illegal.
And Rob, you believe people who wear tracksuits as day wear should have to run at least 800 metres every day. You know what? I'm going to give the point to Richard.
Ooh.
Richard, you won me over with that one. This round is called This Putrid Modern Hell, and it's devoted to the biggest wrongs from the modern world. I'll be asking each of my guests to nominate the thing they hate most about modern life. My favourite answer wins a point. Illegally copying things on the internet is a huge modern problem. The music industry prosecutes people who share MP3s, whereas Hollywood is doing its bit to combat piracy by releasing nothing but unwatchable garbage. Anyway, Richard, what annoys you most about the modern world?
I'm going to nominate something that isn't a modern thing, but it's something that should no longer exist in the modern world, which is receipts.
I thought you were going to say polio. You monster.
No. I mean, I can see why you get a receipt if you buy a television. Absolutely fine. But why is W.H. Smith giving me a receipt when I buy chewing gum? Genuinely, I want a receipt for three reasons to get a receipt. One, you want to take something back. Who's ever going to take back chewing gum? Come on. If you can think of an instance where you take back chewing gum.
I've been disappointed by chewing gum.
Hey, we've all been there. So, you're not, unless you're an MP, going to claim for it. It's not tax deductible. And also, you're never going to give it as a gift. You know, I would never give chewing gum as a gift again. I genuinely wouldn't. I've got to say that was the worst Valentine's Day ever. But, so I buy a chewing gum, they give me a receipt, which is the size of the Bayeux Tapestry, always. You sort of put it in your pocket, you think, oh, God, I've got a receipt. And then later, you think, oh, I've got a tenner in my pocket. And you put it out, it's a receipt for chewing gum, you thought, I haven't got any money. There's no need to have them. When we're trying to protect the environment, they're literally like a throwback to the 40s or something.
I absolutely agree with you on this one.
I
absolutely agree. Because, for example, if you go into a coffee shop, if you don't take this, you want the receipt, and if you say no, they look hurt. The people behind the counter look upset. And then if they say, do you want a loyalty card? And you say, I don't want a loyalty card. Then it's almost like I've hurt them personally.
You say, cheer up, love, don't.
I know what you mean, because when they offer you a loyalty card, it is like they're asking, do you want to see me again?
Yeah.
It's like the awkward moment. No, not really. No, I'm just going to love you and leave you.
Yeah, it's like they say you'll get a free coffee if you come back 10 times. And it's like if I go on, if you're dating someone, they say, well, you might get to second base at the end of 10 days.
Do you get to second base with a loyalty card?
Yeah.
Is that how it works? I'm going to fill one of those out. Yeah. Just to see what depravity we can get to by the time they've stamped the last coffee bean.
But my pockets are always full of these receipts for things that I don't require.
Yeah, you know what? Receipts are not a big problem. I want to take a recording of you saying this and play it to somebody who's dying in some gutter somewhere in the third world. Play a tape of you moaning about your receipts, your first world problem. You make me sick.
With absolute respect, they will not understand English.
To be honest, it didn't accord that degree of respect with it at all. Rob, what is it that annoys you about the modern world?
Charity fundraising. Hear me out.
What is wrong?
No, I'm all for sort of raising money for charity, but when people do stuff that's not really worthy of sponsorship, like when you work in an office and like someone will come round and they're doing a 5k run and they want like 20 quid and you're like, that is 3 miles, I'll do that to the shop and back. Do you know what I mean? Like, sure, they should be doing, like, people running marathons are doing these crazy things and like, I think they do like 2k, just go around the office getting sponsorship. I was like, Kilimanjaro, people want you to sponsor them to go to Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, but hang on a minute. What? No, I'm not letting you have that. What do you want them to do? What is it? I'll give you your money for the hospice, but only if you lift that big a weight. It's got to be. I want to see you sweat. I want you to sweat for my money. That's what I want. What are you, some kind of slave driver?
No, but someone wanted me to sponsor them. They're going, I'm climbing Kilimanjaro, right? And they need to raise £8,000. For that goes on flights and accommodation. I'm like, why don't you just run somewhere? You get the £8,000, give that all to charity, and pay for your own holiday. All right?
That's reasonable.
But surely everybody middle class will have climbed Kilimanjaro fairly soon. Everybody does it.
Do you think they'll...
You know what? I will sponsor someone to paint Kilimanjaro. That's what I will do.
So many people could walk up Kilimanjaro, they will wear it down. So it'll be the size of like a small anthill.
And then there'll be another charity case to restore Kilimanjaro.
Yeah. Again, I hate to agree with both of the other, but I completely agree. I think there should be an element of real danger in what someone's doing before I sponsor them. Like, if someone said, I'm going to go in a barrel over a waterfall, I'm in. Do you know what I mean? You're going to get £10, maybe 15 with gift aid. If I think there's a genuine danger you might not come back from this, yes, I'm in. I'll be there, in fact, to see it. Because people used to do really quite interesting things. But you're right, now it's like, baking cakes and eating them, will you give us a tenner? I'm not doing that.
You just want risk. You want people to... Why do they have to bother going over it? But why not just close their eyes and walk across the street?
I'm happy to sponsor someone to do that as well, if they want to.
So, Susan, what annoys you about the modern world?
What I hate is that there's a lack of reassurance amongst television programme makers that the audience have any form of either recall or intelligence or deductive reasoning. And by that I mean every programme now seems to have an explanation of what's about to happen in the programme or what has happened in the programme. So, for example, I watched a history archaeology type programme. The start of it will say we are searching for Atlantis. Atlantis is X, Y and Z. Then there's an advert break. Then they say, as you know, we've been searching for Atlantis. So far we've been to the following continents. We haven't found it yet. There's another advert break. We've spent a great deal of time looking for Atlantis in the following places, and it's blah, blah, blah. And then in the last 30 seconds they go, oh, by the way, we found it. And you go... But you've just missed the entire programme explaining to us exactly what's been happening in the programme. And it essentially says, we as audience members are unable to work anything out for ourselves or even remember what has happened 3.5 minutes prior to that. That we are so drunk as a British nation that we require somebody to stand directly to us and say, now listen, thickos, you may not know what's just happened, but this has just happened. We don't need summaries all the time.
Well, I was watching a programme the other day, and I was quite enjoying it. It's about the 1970s. But it smacked of an executive somewhere saying, you've got to make sure that people can connect with this. And so he had to start the show by saying, where were you in the 1970s? Maybe you were buying your first home. Or maybe you were at school. Maybe you weren't even born yet. It basically covers everything. Maybe you were breathing oxygen or not. There was oxygen in the 1970s. The 1970s were a series of years. I know what you mean. It's incredibly frustrating that you get...
It is, and I wouldn't mind if they did it, because American soaps are fantastic at it. So if you watch Sunset Beach, which used to be on, what would happen is...
Sorry, are you complaining about the lack of intellectual rigour in Sunset Beach?
They used to do it. They used to do it in quite a fun way, in that they didn't have a recap, but what would happen is there was always someone in a hospital bed, and the nurse would come in and say to the doctor, how is he? And the doctor would go, he's fine apart from the car crash, because his brother, who's actually his twin, who's his mother, crashed the car because they were drunk. And then that person out there is X, Y and Z. And so they would summarise essentially 3 series of the show in 30 seconds for you. And then you go, fine, that's fun, that's narrative. So television makers, show us the programme, and if we don't know what's going on, that's what Twitter's for.
Good
Susan's
point,
currently describing what she doesn't like about television. Just if you weren't sure what's happening at this point.
Previously on So Wrong It's Right. So to summarise, about the modern world, the things that annoy you about the modern world: Richard, receipts bug you. Rob Beckett, charity fundraising. Susan Calman, it's patronising TV shows that treat you like an idiot. You know what, Rob? I was so disgusted to learn of that. I'm going to give the point to you. And so to our final round, I'll be asking my guests a series of quick-fire questions. As always, the wrongest answer to each one wins a point. What is the least tactful thing you could say to a widow at a funeral?
Morning. Could say, look on the bright side, you used to be a MILF, but now you're a WILF.
Cheer up, love, it might never happen.
Yeah.
Give a point to Richard. What is the worst possible advertising slogan for the British Tourist Board?
Come and experience trench foot.
Can I go with Great Brit, it's amazeballs? Now includes Wales.
Oh, that's worth a point. That's worth a point. Ooh, that noise means we've reached the end of the show, making Richard this week's worst contestant. Congratulations, Richard Osman. You're officially so wrong, you're right. Commiserations to Susan Calman and Rob Beckett. And that's all we've got time for this week. Goodbye.
So Wrong It's Right was hosted by Charlie Brooker with guests Richard Osman, Rob Beckett and Susan Calman. The producer